Nicole is the Equestrian Chief Marketing Officer and previously worked for Ridely, the app, as the US country manager. And we are talking all about networking for business and startup mentalities and how to really meet people and build on that for future business success. So, Nicole, lovely to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me, Nicola. That's amazing to be invited on this great podcast.
Oh, absolute pleasure. So let's set the scene then for our listeners. We met a couple of weeks ago at a conference at the AK conference, aka car conference, and we were chatting as stands opposite each other. We were chatting, and I was just really interested, in what Aquestic do, and I've come across the coach app before, and then we were chatting about people we had in common, and I thought, oh my gosh, Nicole would be a great guest on the podcast because she's clearly got an amazing network. So it's through networking effectively that we met and that we're on this podcast, and that's really what we're going to be chatting about. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about your current role, and then we'll dive into how networking has really helped you be where you are right now, because you've done some really interesting things in the past, haven't you?
I'm going to be dating myself now
Yeah.
because I've done such a variety of things. But with my current role with Equestic, which I'm really enjoying, it is a fantastic group of people, diversified, from different countries. All of us are very passionate about, horses and the sport and how we can, help riders and coaches and horses in the focus of horse welfare. So to me, all of those pieces are encompassing things that touch my heart, which is why the company and the role really spoke to me, and I was just delighted to come on board with the team. It's even better than I had anticipated, which is always exciting. And then being able to I'm from the US, grew up there, but spent some time in England for 10 years, riding and competing myself. And right now I am back in the UK, where my sort of heart place is. So again, my network, which we'll be talking about, but as far as with joining Equestic, it's to me, it's a global initiative. So for me, it's fits into what I do.
Amazing. And just tell us a little bit more about the coach app and the sort of device that goes onto a stirrup, doesn't it, to monitor what horses are up to as well.
So there's two products that we have. The
Mm.
flagship product is actually called the saddle clip, and this is how big it is. And this literally clips on to the left side of your saddle flap behind your
I've got
leg.
it on the stirrup. It's on the saddle flap. Yeah, brilliant.
And it must be on the left side, not on the right side, because this little piece of technology is very brilliant, but it is, created to, there's far more high tech pieces that I can probably even explain. That is for our founder, Leon Rubin, to explain, because he's a great techie and he invented this really for rehabbing his horse.
Mm.
To give insight to what is actually happening with your horse's body that you can't see necessarily or feel. He had a horse that was injured, wanted to know, during rehab, how much was enough, how much, maybe something was too much, what was that? There was no Fitbits or anything for
Mm.
horses back then that we, have for humans now. So this was created with that thought in place. So what this does is basically records a huge amount of data, 50 pieces of data per second.
Wow.
And yeah, and what this does is your straightness, your rhythm, your impulsion, your transitions with all the gaits, how many times you're going left, how many times you're going
Mm.
right, because in the end, you're trying to build symmetry, right? This is for the training, how you're training your horse.
Mm.
And honestly, we hear, top trainers saying, you should be doing 50 transitions a ride, 100 transitions a ride, what you should be building on. But are we really counting when we ride? No, we're
No.
focusing.
And if we were counting, I would have forgotten and lost count many
Exactly. Like,
times.
hang on a minute. Was that 10, 20?
Yeah.
Like, where was I?
And we've
So,
got so much bias. I was just thinking when you were saying, like, I don't, am I really spending equal amounts of time on both reins? I might intend to, I might think I am, but but actually, I don't honestly know unless I've got a trainer there with me, and I don't have a trainer there every time I ride. So, what an amazing piece of kit to give me an actual picture of what's happening in a ride, but also I guess it's about building out patterns and seeing what is happening, not just in that ride, but how does that fit into the last 10 rides, the last 3 months, etc., etc. So I bet you get some fascinating data insights.
It is incredible, actually. And from a personal experience, when I joined the company and they sent me a saddle clip, I have a PRE. Those breeds of horses move a little differently than
Mm,
others. They do hit the ground a little, harder. And this
mm,
device also measures that. The power of the push off, your landing. It measures your jumps. All these pieces of data. So I put it and used it on my horse. And everything's great. And it's so interesting to see, really, like even at the most basic things, like you just said, how many times I'm going left compared to
mm,
right, and my transitions of what my goals are, and my straightness, where
mm.
I did eventing, I've done jumping, but I'm back to dressage because I'm not so brave. But obviously, that is our intention, is to build symmetry,
Yeah.
your lateral work and everything. So I went away for a little trip. I had to go down to Florida, and I come back and I put it back on my horse. And I look at the data. I know his right hind has always been the weakest, um, but it flagged basically paired with the left front on that diagonal pair. And wouldn't you know, he threw a splint.
Wow, I love
So it
that.
was like, oh, I wish I'd had this. Like, this would have been such
Yeah.
a great investment for me, because it's really rather inexpensive as an incredible tool for your horse, and a lot less expensive than the $1,800 in shockwave therapy that I had to spend to
Mm,
treat that splint. Now, he never
mm.
went lame, didn't feel it, but this saddle clip caught it,
Yeah, that is an
and I wish
incredible
it was
story.
incredible. And
I love the accuracy. I mean, gosh,
yeah.
that is absolutely fascinating. And what a useful piece for an equine practitioner. Because as I was just saying with a client the other day, yes, what you do when you're there, amazing. What about the other 23, 22 hours in that particular day, all the other days? So this is something amazing for the owner, but also absolutely invaluable for a practitioner if their clients have this, because then they can be, finding out a lot more detail and data, and seeing if people are doing their homework as well because that's a key part of the puzzle, isn't it? Owners need to stay on track, and this sounds like an amazing way of feeling. I mean, I'd feel very motivated if I knew I was going to effectively get like a printout of what I've been up to in my ride. That is amazing. I love that. Really, really fascinating. So that's the clip on, the kind of horse wearable, so to speak,
Mhm.
that you would only use within training. And then there's the coaching app as well.
Yeah, so then we developed, the it's called the Coach Copilot. And what this does, we it was created because it was, you go into a lesson, the intention of writing things down after your lesson, you always say you should write important pieces
Mm,
down, take notes about your riding, even take notes if you're thinking of something, but really in science, when you're taking a lesson, you're not only, you're listening to your coach, you're implementing what the coach is asking you to do, you're asking the horse to do something, the horse is then responding, there's a lot of pieces going on, as we know about riders. And honestly, by the time we walk out of the arena, untack our horses, scientifically, a lot of that is gone. You're going to retain the key highlights, maybe a breakthrough moment, but honestly, how did you get there? Those pieces are a little bit lost. So what happens is, you go to ride by yourself after your lesson, maybe you only see your coach once a week, once a
mm,
month, however that works. You spend money for your lesson, which is
mm,
that is what we should all do, and spend the money is to
mm.
educate ourselves for our horses. So you spend money on your lesson. They are expensive, but it's more expensive to forget them. So what
Yeah.
can we do about that? What the Coach Copilot does, it's an app that both the coach and the rider need to have. They sync together. The rider doesn't even have it on their, riding with it or anything. And the app audio records your lesson, your coach's voice. You can do that just with the app with your phone, or you can put on a little microphone like this, clip it onto
Mhm.
here, you sync it with your phone. Audio records your lesson, transcribes and summarizes all the key hooks, what happened in your lesson, your homework, what the coach says to you. So this is the way your coach teaches you. It's not changing the way the coach is teaching
Yeah,
you.
it's just summarizing it.
And it doesn't matter what level you are. You could be a
Yeah,
complete novice, amateur,
yeah,
any discipline. How it works is it transcribes with our back end AI, which is
mm,
equestrian trained versus
yeah,
any other that's not. As we know, we've probably used it for writing and it wants to change it because it doesn't know what, I
yeah.
don't
It
know,
doesn't understand
Piaf,
the
Passage,
terms.
collection, all
Yeah,
those other things are.
totally. I
So
love that,
now,
and I think
yeah,
for me as like as a busy person, somebody that wants to still keep training, even though I am a trainer, I love working with my trainer. Um, but as I get off, I'm a bit shot mentally and physically. The phone might ring, or I'm sort of like, oh my gosh, I've got to go get the kids from school.
yeah.
I haven't had the processing time. And then, as you said, it's just gone. Yes, of course, the key highlights are there, but also that's such a great way to not put extra work on the coach. Because as much as I might love my coach to send me a lovely summary, probably they're also busy. So, what a great bit of kit that can just bridge that gap. I love that. That's fantastic.
Well, the other interesting piece of this, because it's the coach is a bit the summary goes to the coach. The
Mm,
coach reviews it, can edit if they want. I actually don't even think we've even had a lot of editing. It's highly accurate. We've just had
mm,
a lot of ambassadors come on and say this is a game changer.
mm.
So the coach has the control and then sends it to the rider. This also works for the coach because now the coach can look back and go, geez, oh, we're doing another lesson this week. What did we do last time? They might
Yeah.
remember, but they might have 20 students. There's a
Yeah, I
lot to
mean,
remember
I
with
used to, when I
students.
was a full-time writing coach, I would teach at least 8 lessons a day, 5, 6, sometimes 7 days a week. I loved it.
Yeah.
That's a lot to hold in your head. And one of the things I love helping people with, Nicole, is taking your business out of your head, is freeing you up mentally so that you can enjoy life, be more creative, switch off, reduce burnout. So anything like this that just makes it easier to help horses more effectively and efficiently. I love that so much. Absolutely brilliant. So you've got the role as chief marketing officer. You seem to know everybody. Tell us all about networking. How you're very chatty, friendly, bubbly. It was such a pleasure to meet you. But how has getting yourself out there, and meeting people really helped you with, supporting the growth of Equestrian and in other roles? So, yeah, give us your networking secrets then.
Well, to be honest, I think your network is your most valuable piece.
Mm,
You know, you spend your life, whether, and I have a diverse background where I was, I came here as a rider and wanted to train, and through my trainer met a lot of other top riders as personal friends in a network and different sports. And then this was going back some years. I then actually created the very first equestrian website back in 1995, and sort of taught myself the code, found the niche there, but became a journalist. So
mm,
then, as I was reporting and going to all these top events, I was, meeting other journalists, photographers that then turned into digital creators and
mm,
traveling to shows and working with events. And so that's another network that are all even lifelong friends and a
mm,
network now that I know I can call on for various things. And then also as a competitor rider, importing horses, so I've done a diverse life and career. But I do feel that is probably my most important piece, aside in addition to working with various brands and companies in different, whether it's, a digital app or product or retail, for equestrian wear and horsewear and that sort of thing. I've also done that as far as marketing and having retail shops and setting up shops and working with influencers. So I think with such a diverse career, you do tend to grow your network, which I
Mm,
actually really love. Like that is for me, connecting with my network and working with different federations and organizations. And plus, people in your network also grow and move
mm,
as well. So
definitely.
that is just a natural process.
Mm. To me, the horse world is massive and tiny at the same time. There's so many, multiple thousands and thousands and thousands of people, millions of people, but everybody is connected in some way, and that's what I find fascinating. We were just talking before we started recording about somebody that we both knew, and I'm sure we've got many other people that we, share in our own networks. So in terms of starting a network, because it is easy to meet people and build your own network for sure, but at the same time, it's also easy to keep yourself to yourself, go to an event with your horse, do your class, not say anything to anybody, and leave, go to the next one. And it is particularly, for some people, you can feel quite isolated. Maybe you're a rider with your own yard or a trainer. You might be a practitioner. Yep, you know your clients, but actually you're on your own quite a lot as well. So what's your thoughts on getting started with building your own network?
I think you have to just be brave sometimes,
Mm,
and kind of put yourself out there. Maybe you might be a little bit more uncomfortable about it, but but I think as you do that, you gain confidence. Um, I think my family's also, we're sort of a chatty group, social people. It is, even when I started way back when, even like with my website and going to being part of the media at these big events. My first
mm.
event as part of the media was at Badminton.
Oh,
I
I
mean,
love
talk
that.
about intimidating.
Yeah.
And, pulling up to Badminton House for the media day, which was, and I was put at the table with the Duke of Beaufort, who's since passed. But I mean, talk about intimidating. And I'm sitting with the sponsors, but you just have to put yourself out there and just be a little bit brave because honestly, what's the worst thing that can happen? You
I love
know,
that.
Y-
So,
you,
like, tell us about that situation, because for a lot of people, that would have just been too much, and that is quite a lot. Your first reporting gig, go to Badminton House, media day. How do you keep your cool and not let that little voice that could be going, who do you think you are? What are you doing here? You've obviously got a way, Nicole, of rising above that. So what, talk us through what helped you on a day like that. Stick with the plan, stick with the program, and not let that little inner voice going, whoa, what are we doing? Win the day. How was that?
for me, actually, even though it was so intimidating, and I had pulled up to Badminton House in literally the most garbage car in that parking lot, like Fiat Panda Bianca. I don't even know, ancient, but I was like, isn't this just magical? Okay, it is intimidating, but wow, how lucky am I to sort of be here right now of things that I'd only read in books and experienced. I kind of put myself in that way, and I just thought, really, what is the worst that can happen right now? And so I'm put at this table that I certainly had no right to be at this head table. Duke of Beaufort, Alan Smith, famed journalist, and the other two, the journalists on either side, and uh, explaining what I do. No, this was new. The internet was new. Nobody was on there. In fact, at that time at Badminton, the journalists were still calling in their copy on the
Mm.
phone. And here I am with my little laptop, my tiny little digital camera. The real photographers, Kit Houghton, everybody, they had still proper, cameras. There was nothing
Oh
digital
yeah,
back then.
yeah.
And so I was called Internet Girl. Like that was my nickname that I gained. And I remember Alan Smith saying to me, I think this internet thing is just a fad. And I went, I don't think so. I don't know, but I don't think so.
I love that. Turns out you backed the right horse, Nicole, with with being the internet girl. So actually, really leaning into the fact you were a bit different. Nobody quite understood what you were doing. You really owned that, and that is so powerful. And what I'm really hearing is also the gratitude and enjoying that journey, because no, you weren't all these established names. No, you didn't arrive at, I don't know, an Aston Martin or something. But you were there and you were going to make sure you enjoyed that experience and that event. And I love that because you're right. What is the worst that could happen? You know, you're probably not going to, I don't know, fall off your chair or deeply offend somebody. You maybe you don't can't answer a question, or maybe you run out of small talk. That's if that's the worst that could happen. I think we could probably all cope with that. So that's obviously been a really helpful kind of way of thinking that's got you through all these interesting sort of situations. How did that, you know, are you somebody, Nicole, I'm sensing you're somebody that makes things happen. How did you get to be at Badminton in the first place? I think that's, I want to go back a step to find that out.
Well, back then, my trainer, who's still my best friend in the world, is Owen Moore, and he has competed at badminton multiple times. So I had been at badminton and also felt so lucky to go as a groom, and sort of be behind, be in the 10-minute box and racing in between the crowds. And that's when I came up with my idea of the experience that I'm feeling. I would love everybody to enjoy that. You had to, at that point, wait for, a report to come through Horse and Hound,
Mm-hmm.
which is once a week, or Chronicle the Horse in the US. I wanted to share that experience and give that feeling of everybody being there. So I then decided to join the other side of the ropes. And it was just because I had developed the website. It really just happened that I was ready to go. And I was the first one to actually do a paying website. It was a membership,
My gosh, you were
to
so
set that
ahead
up.
of your
Yeah.
time. I love this. Yeah, you were an influencer before there was even a term. I love it. That is fantastic. So yeah, tell us about your PayPal website, your membership.
So, I had no money to really start it. So I thought I had this vision, set up this website. My mom was in the media in the time, and was radio and television in Boston. And she decided to start the first Trimalcast, live radio, live TV, live internet, for the very first one in the world.
Wow.
So I had this idea, and then I decided, well, I can't really afford to pay someone. I'm going to teach myself the code. So I started writing the code for the websites, and then had my little tiny digital camera and was out there taking pictures because I'm going to do what you can do for yourself, right?
Mm.
But having, I think, also experienced and knowing riders behind the ropes, from being a groom, that also helped me in the media tent when they, of course, were on the
Yeah.
platform, coming for interviews and stuff. And then, so I had a little bit of a connection there slightly,
Mm.
and comfort. It's always a little challenging to get up in front of a crowd, and speak, but so many of those journalists and the photographers and the writers are still my connections and my friends. So jumping right in 2 feet, I did that for show jumping, dressage, and eventing. I went to all the top shows jumping, and where some of the shows I had no connections. But it was brilliant to do it, because then you become a familiar face
Yeah.
in those separate worlds. Because even though the equestrian world is small but big, each
Yeah.
discipline is different in
Yeah. Yeah.
itself,
Very,
right?
very different. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's important to grow your network and be present in those different disciplines, because
Mm.
they don't often cross.
Mm.
Unless you're at a world championships or Olympics or
No,
something
no,
like that.
you're right, and particularly coming down to the perhaps more accessible levels, shall we say, that they don't. And this, you often see those funny things on Horse and Hound, like how to spot an event rider at a dressage competition and things like that. They're connected, but they're very different worlds. So what I'm really hearing is that actually, when you've got an idea, Nicole, you run with it, which I love. Now, I have to say, all of the amazing guests, we've had some fabulous guests on the podcast, tend to say something different when I tend to say something different but along the same lines when I ask this next question, which is, what would your advice be to anybody who has got an idea, or 20, because most people listening, they come to me and say, well, I've got about 50 ideas. They've been floating around my head for about 5 years. I just haven't implemented any of them. So what would you say, Nicole, to listeners who they've got an idea, they want to take their business forward in some direction, or it's a sort of passion project they want to pursue? What would be your thoughts on getting started? What would your advice be to them?
I would say go for it. You have an idea and you feel passionate about something, then you do it. And it might be a great success, it might be a failure, but you're going to learn from that. And that will take you forward to either sort of reframing that idea or a next idea, because I think you need
Mm,
to learn from the positives and the negatives.
yeah.
And that is what I did. And I think you have to reflect on those good and bad
Mm,
as kind of goods, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
what
Everything's a
you're probably
learning.
not going to repeat, it's all a learning process. But
Mm.
I would say absolutely follow it because someone else might think of it.
I love that. I love that. So that is the call to action for listeners. If you're sitting in an idea, particularly if you're sat on it for a long time, just do it. And I
Do
love
it.
how you've described like, okay, I didn't have like 10 grand to go and invest. But you still made it happen because there is always a way. We had a guest on recently who was talking about how there's people that may do like a talent swap. Somebody who may be able to offer, I don't know, photography is a great example, services in exchange for what you do. There's, when you share what you want to bring into the world and are really committed to make it happen, I always think the right opportunity, the right person will just pop out of space, out of nowhere, and be there to meet you. But you have to get started, don't you?
Absolutely. And one of my favorite shows is, I think over here you call it Dragon's Den, and in
Oh
America we
yeah,
call it the Shark Tank.
yeah.
And I love those like success stories and watching the
Mm,
the presentation, and where people have had this vision and have really worked hard to to make it happen, bring it to light. Talk about intimidating going in front of that crew, right?
yeah.
But great, because again, it's not going to happen unless you try. So
Mm,
you need to try. And it's almost like, you buy a horse and you have a vision, and you have to try. And there's going to be ups and downs, as we know, even with riding horses. And that's the same way with business. We take the ups with the downs and we learn from those.
mm,
And yeah, for me, that's a huge important part of business. And but you also hear people that say, well, oh goodness, I'm going to quit my day job and I'm going to do this business, and I'll be able to make my own hours and do that. Well, I can tell you, often doing your own business is twice as hard as probably your average 9 to 5, where you go home and you shut off and you can watch,
mm,
as you probably know, with your business, you're still doing emails 10 or 11 o'clock at night. And for me, I was doing, at the time when I was doing my website, I was having faxes come in and retyping results because I did all three Olympic disciplines. But you do it,
mm,
because it's your passion, and you do see the success of it, but it does take
mm.
that extra bit.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, and it can be fun along the way because it sounds like you've had an awful lot of fun, but sometimes you are gonna just have to dig in and do what it takes. Yeah, amazing. Well, Nicole, thank you so much for joining us, sharing networking, value of networking, and the power of getting started. And your business journey is absolutely fascinating. So thank you so much for joining us today. Where is the best place for everybody to find out more about the work of Equestic and the products that we've been mentioning, services we've been mentioning today?
Well, if you go to equestic.com, so that's EQUESTIC.com, you can find all the information there about both products. And, please reach out if anybody wants to know more. Send an email, they'll get to us. We are a very small team, is a startup company. So we all wear even multiple hats, and we really feel connected with all of our users on both products. So, it's not some big company where your message is going to be lost somewhere. So
Yeah,
please reach out.
your message matters. Amazing. Well, we'll put
Yes.
all the links to socials, website, and so forth for Equestic in the show notes. And Nicole, thanks again for being a fabulous guest. Really appreciate you joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me, Nicola. And I hope to see you in the very near future. We're going to have to reconnect
Oh,
in
definitely.
person again.
Yeah, definitely.